So good. Hi guys, please come back. I had to go for Grace mpaka penye alikuwa nimemleta, so I'm hoping she will be joining us soon so that we can go on with our discussion. Yes, karibu Grace Njoki. I see you have been very patient, you have been waiting for us. Tunashukuru sana. Mimi nasema Grace imebidi nimemwendea mpaka stage. Oh Grace, I have to add you. I had seen you, Grace. I don't know where you have gone. Please come back or send me a request to be in my broadcast. I don't know where you have gone. I had seen you on my list of viewers so that I'm able to add you. Please come back. Yes, so today we are talking about domestic workers screening and employment rights. And Grace is an expert in that area. So she will be enlightening us today on what to do and what not to do. Grace, I have invited you, but it's telling me that you're not able to respond. I don't know why. If you have a watch party, please cancel it. So that, yes, now I'm going to add you. Yes, finally our guest is going to be here in 1, 2, 3. Yay! Karibu sana Grace.
I'm very sorry.
Yes. We tunaelewa hii ni mambo ya technology. Sometimes it acts up, but we are glad you could be able to join us.
Thank you.
Yes. Watu wengi walikuwa hapa, wakakunywa chai, wakaenda, but I'm hoping they will be back. So because of we have lost a lot of time waiting, but I hope guys are going to give us more of their time. We will go direct into our discussion today. Most people think that hiring a domestic worker ni kupost tu nataka mfanyikazi and it ends there. But we know it's more detailed than that. You and I can attest to that. And it starts from the moment you're hiring to the moment you're dismissing. So we will go through that process, pole, and I'm sure Grace is going to give us tips and the do's and the don'ts and the red flags we should look out for and what we should do when we're living with our domestic workers. And as domestic workers, we're also being challenged. I like what Grace says. Be mad enough to demand for your rights. So karibu sana Grace, maybe you can tell the people who you are and a brief introduction before we start the discussion of the day.
Okay, thank you so much. First, I want to apologize for being late. I was really trying to log in, but I was not able, but at least now I'm here. So introducing myself, I'm Grace Machuki Masereti. I'm the co-founder of Find Real Me Limited. And Find Real Me Limited is a domestic workers background check company. We are also a domestic workers employment rights campaign group because we want to sensitize domestic workers and employers of their rights. Our mission is to ensure safer households and safer domestic service. And we know to achieve our mission, we must have objectives, and these are to campaign for domestic workers background checks, and also to sensitize employers and domestic workers about their rights. Because without giving domestic workers their rights, you don't expect them to act professionally, and achieving safer households is almost impossible.
Wow.
So that's what we do.
Wow, thank you so much for that brief introduction. I like the fact that you're so much committed to ensuring that we are having safe homes. And I always tell people that our homes are like a safe haven. When you go out there and everything is not making sense, you should be able to get back home and get some peace. But sometimes the people we bring into our homes do not allow us to have the peace that we should be having in the home. So Grace, maybe we can start with when you're hiring a domestic worker, what are the steps and what are the background checks that someone should do? And why is it important to do these checks?
I like when you say we bring people home who do not allow us, that peace and comfort. First, I think every employer, to achieve that comfort, you need to ask yourself, what am I doing to achieve that comfort? And that brings me to the next answer. Screen. Carry out background checks. So we always propose the following steps. Before you hire domestic workers, write down what you require in your household. What is your expectations of a domestic worker? What is she coming to do in your household? What are going to be her duties? You know, such things. Once you have that breakdown of what you require from a domestic worker and what your needs are, you're going to carry out, you're going to source for a domestic worker. Now you know you need what age the domestic worker should be, education background, can they speak English, what other language do you expect of them, do they have any other training, you know. So after that you can source. I always say there's no better place or worse place you can source. There are people sourcing even from social media and they get a good person. The idea is after you source that person, what next? Do you just bring them in your household and they start working? No. After that, you need to do identity authenticity. You welcome them for an interview, which you always say, let it be telephone conversation. Never invite someone to your household the first time you're meeting them. Meet in a public area. That is after taking the information on phone. The information you're going to do on telephone interview is what is their name? Do they have an ID card number? And what is their ID card number? Give them your expectations. Are they willing to fulfill this, or are they willing or able to fulfill these conditions? You know, are they willing to relocate to your area? You know, such things. Once, have 3 to 4 people. Don't interview the first people and the first person and that is the person you're going to hire. Have at least 3 to 4 people. After that, you invite them for a face-to-face interview. During face-to-face interview, ask them to come with original documents and photocopies, of course. You're going to do identity authentication. That is to verify that the ID card is genuine and that the domestic worker is the legit holder of that document. We have issues where the domestic worker comes with another party's ID card. You run a background check on them. By the time this person commits an offense in your household and leave, you cannot even trace them because the ID card was not theirs. So how do you do identity authentication? You can use the eCitizen platform, that is www.ecitizen.go.ke. You're going to verify if that ID card is genuine, issued by the government. After that, you're going to verify ownership of the document. How do you verify ownership of the document? First, you're going to compare the image on the ID card with the actual person. If the results are not conclusive in that the image is compressed and you cannot be able to tell if this is the person presenting it, you can request for additional documents. These documents can include birth certificate, academic certificate, certificate of good conduct, NHIF, NSSF, or any other government issued document. All these documents should have similar details to those on the ID card. Any change of name should be accompanied by somebody must have taken a deed poll, you know, done affidavit, and that has been registered in the Gazette. So if the names do not tally, don't accept that ID card. That is not the person you're going to hire. After identity authenticity, you're going to do compatibility tests. Sometimes you have employers who bring a domestic worker in their house. The second day, somebody is like, oh, this bureau gave me this girl. She's an introvert. She doesn't know how to, you know, relate to kids. But did you do your part on compatibility assessment? You're going to see if this person is going to relate well with the culture of your household. Culture in terms of character, is this person an introvert? Is this person an extrovert? What is their religion? Is it compatible to yours? Are you a Muslim and you're bringing in a Christian who's not going to adhere to your practices? You know?
Yeah.
Okay, after compatibility, you're going to do risk assessment. Risk assessment, you're going to assess what risk factors this domestic worker may introduce in your household, right? You're going to check on their mental health. You're going to check if they have any other medical illness that is going to interfere with their work. For example, if somebody is epileptic, you did not check that during the interview. The domestic worker is in your house. The second day you've gone to work, you have a 2-year-old in the house, and you've left that person with somebody who is having an epileptic attack. What happens? You know, this person is in the kitchen cooking and the gas is on and she has had an attack. What happens? You know, is this person honest enough? How do you tell if somebody is honest by the first meeting? I'm sure that is one of the questions many people want to know. I'm meeting this person for the second time, because you remember I said about telephone interview. How do I know this person is honest? Start with simple things. Are the answers she gave you during the telephone conversation tally with what she's telling you now. In the telephone conversation, this person told you, oh, I'm an orphan, you know, I'm living alone, I just need help. Then all of a sudden you hear, oh, I'm staying with my mom in the village. Honesty in this profession is a virtue. If the information to begin with during the interview do not tally, just stop. Leave it there.
Yeah.
If somebody says, this is my first time to work, all of a sudden during the interview, she tells you, oh, you know where I used to work? You're like, but you told me you've never worked, you know? You can actually fetch honesty during this second meeting. Let me say second meeting.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Grace, we've lost you for a while there.
Work for me. You did not specify age.
We had lost you a bit. Maybe you can rewind kidogo.
Okay, let me repeat. Trial period.
Hello, Grace.
Yes, you can hear me.
Okay, trial period. This is after the risk assessment.
Yes, after the risk assessment.
Okay.
Trial period. Let me first explain what trial period is. Trial period is when you're satisfied with the domestic workers' particulars or details, and you're now willing to give them the job. But don't give them the job before you see actually their practicals, right? So you're comfortable with their age, academic background, they're honest enough, they're pleasant people, you think they can relate well with your child, they say they can cook, Somali dish, Indian dish, all these things. You want to see, can they really do this, right? So once they come to your house, and I was asking a question, how many people are guilty of calling a bureau and telling them, I need a house help? You did not specify anything. Somebody comes to your house, automatically they are hired. The next day you're calling the bureau, oh, I don't want this person you sent me, they don't know how to cook like they said. Did you do trial period? Trial period is when you put them to test. What needs to happen is that you need to invite them to your house. You're comfortable, as I said, with the security aspect of it. You invite them to your house, you give them the, what they're going to do, what you expect of them, how your household is run. You wake up at this time, this is the time my child is going to eat, this is the time I expect you to rest, this is the time I expect you to go to the market, and all that. You're supposed to sit down and watch the domestic worker do, you like act now. So you're not supposed to interfere with what they're doing. You're supposed to sit down and watch, unless it's very necessary. Like, for example, if they're feeding the kid and you're seeing they're doing it totally wrong. Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but your video, we can't see you clearly. Yes, now we are seeing you. You became static at one point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then your voice was breaking a bit.
Okay, so where do I start from?
We were talking about the trial period at that point where you, on the trial period, that is where we are right now.
Yes. Okay, on the trial period, you're putting, yes, can you see me?
Yes, I can see you. On the trial period, you have been breaking a lot.
Okay, I'm going to do more like a summary of it. You're going to put the domestic worker into practicals of it. You're supposed to run them with the schedule of your house.
Yeah.
Sit back, watch them do it. Unless it's very necessary, do not interfere, right? You need to check on their hygiene, time management, how they socialize with the members of their household, how they cook the food they're able to cook. And after that, that is when you're comfortable to offer an employment contract. Let me say this. A background check and screening does not automatically mean this person will never commit an offense. It does not also mean this person has never committed an offense. That is almost
has never
for background check.
Committed an offense.
A background check does not automatically mean this person has never committed an offense or they will never commit an offense. What a background check does is that you cut the risks of having a rogue domestic worker in your household. So as much as you've done, there's some people who say, I did all these things and this person stole from me. That does not mean a background check automatically covers you from any risk of a rogue domestic worker. That's what everybody misunderstands. And that is another blame bureaus have really endured. They do the background check, but somebody else, the domestic worker ends up committing an offense. That does not mean once you do the bureau does the background check, automatically this person will never commit an offense. That is not what a background check does.
Okay, and all these processes, are they supposed to be done by a third party like a bureau or an agent, or it is the responsibility of the employer to actually do all these steps, or to take themselves through all these steps?
Okay, this is what I expect. The bureau that is referring a domestic work, especially if it's a professional bureau, they must have conducted their own background checks.
Sure.
However, an employer must, and I'm using must, always perform another background check. Whatever the bureau does, you can use it as supporting. So it can be supporting information, but always carry out your background checks. Let me use, for example, compatibility test. Only an employer knows the culture of our household.
Yeah, sure.
A bureau can never, unless that person has really stayed in your household and knows the culture, you cannot blame the bureau that they do not send you somebody who's compatible to your household.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. And it reminds me of what I was actually thinking in the morning, that availability does not necessarily mean compatibility. Because you see, some employers, the first person they get, and that is the person they hire, but it does not necessarily mean that they are a fit for your home. So all these steps are actually very important when you're hiring a domestic worker. So, and you have also addressed on the importance of the background check and orientation. It helps you have a smooth transition of the DM into your home. Maybe now we can go into the domestic workers' rights. What are their rights? The ones that I have seen, most of the people I know, they only talk of minimum wage, and it ends there. Even most employers think that it ends at minimum wage. So what are these employment rights that domestic workers deserve, and what is it that employers should do about them?
I'm always saying it's very clever that majority, our society wants to pick on minimum wage and forget about day off. So let me just address the whole domestic workers.
Yes.
Domestic workers are employees like any other employee in this country. Their rights are enshrined in the employment laws of this country. So when you're going for your off days, remember your domestic worker has a legal right also to go for off day. So let's start with the minimum wage. Domestic workers are in a special category that is covered by the minimum wage, right? And the minimum wage is issued under the regulation wage order. The CS, after being advised by the wage council, there's a group of people that are called wage, they are a council, right? They help the CS put down can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, the wage council advises the CS on what minimum wage is required at a particular age. If you look at a particular time, if you look at the minimum wage, it has always been increasing. Every Labor Day we hear about increment. Of course, apart from this year, we do not have an increment, right? And for the wage council to advise the CS, they look at certain things. They look at the needs of the domestic workers and their families, the economic situation of the country at that particular point, poverty and alleviation. Then they are able to advise the CS on what minimum wage to put. And one thing employers need to realize is that they have power to influence the minimum wage. Before you complain,
they have powers to influence the minimum wage.
Yes.
Okay.
Before an employer complains the minimum wage is too high, what have they done so far? They have a legal right to advise the CS. How does this happen? The law allows for the CS 30 days, at least not less than 30 days before publishing the minimum wage in the Gazette, to publish the proposal in the newspaper, mainstream newspaper. And the public is allowed to give their suggestion, to oppose, to say it's too high for us. I'm earning 15K. How do you expect me to pay the domestic worker 13K? How many employers have done this? How many employers know they can influence this?
Actually, I didn't also know that you can be able to contribute to the minimum wage.
You actually can. You can write to the CS. You can meet the CS, go to the CS office and say, this minimum wage is not attainable. This minimum wage is never going to work. It's just on paper, like people normally say, that is done 30 days before it is put in the Gazette, right?
Okay.
Then after that, the CS can decide whether to decrease, to increase. But unfortunately, I must be honest enough, I've followed for the last 3 years. I've always followed to see when that is done. I've never seen it in the mainstream newspaper. So
Oh,
again,
no,
you
you
really
see,
cannot.
that's why we are not even aware that that happens. I'm like, yeah,
Yes,
you mean I can even write and say this is a bit low?
yes, that is in law. You are allowed. It's legal. You are allowed to
Okay.
give your proposals. How many employers have seen this in the newspaper? I'm sure people will ask, when did you see last? I've been following. I've never seen. The fact that it has not been there does not mean we sit back, complain, and do nothing.
But that is
Why
what we are
can't we
really
as
good at.
employers? Yeah, why can't we as employers, like every other department is doing, complain to the CS and say, we have never seen these proposals. We've never seen these proposals on the mainstream newspaper. We want to see it and we want to give our suggestion. Look at
Yeah.
it this way. We are not complaining. We are not saying anything. We are sitting back and being keyboard warriors saying this is too high, I cannot achieve. Guess what? You cannot achieve it. But the moment your domestic worker takes you to court, you're going to pay something called, you're going to be fined with underpayment. Underpayment
Yeah.
is when the domestic worker goes to court because you've not been paying them 13,540 in Nairobi, and what the court is going to do is going to take the difference. So if you've been paying 9,000 for the last 6 months, what the court is going to do is going to take the difference, 13,540 minus 9,000. Then for the many months you've been underpaying, the
Underpaying.
penalty is that high. People end up paying millions. You can be a warrior as much as you want on the keyboard, not complain to the CS and everything else. But when it goes to court, you definitely are going to pay that difference in underpayment.
Wow.
That is why the minimum wage remuneration is a domestic worker's right. You need to pay them in time. You need to keep records of the payments. So every time you pay your domestic
Yes,
worker,
please,
you must
please,
have a
please,
payment.
Grace, sorry to cut you short. You broke a little bit. You said that you're supposed to pay them in time.
Yes, you're supposed to pay them in time. Don't take 2 months or pay 10th of today you're paying on 10th, the next month you're paying on 25th. This domestic worker has needs as well. Pay them in time.
What is the latest that you can pay in a month? Is it 7th of every month?
No, there's it's not in legal, it's not put down in legal papers or books at what time you should pay them. But it should be an agreement between a domestic worker and the employer.
I don't know where I had seen like it's before the 7th of every month. By the 7th of every month, I don't know. I'll confirm.
Share it with me when you get it. I would love to have
Yes, I will.
show.
I will.
Yeah. Thank you. So you need to pay them in time. It should be like in Nairobi. The minimum wage is categorized in counties. Nairobi,
It's
Kisumu, and
categorized?
Mombasa in counties according to the county. So in Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu, it's 13,540. Municipalities, they have theirs. I can send that through the conversation, what the minimum wage for every county is, right?
Okay.
So you are supposed to keep documents of the payment, receipt of payment. So every
Proof
time
of
you pay a
payment?
domestic worker, yes, proof of payment. Every time you pay a domestic worker, it should be documented. So there should be like a petty cash book or somewhere the domestic worker signs that they've received their salaries. The risk of not documenting that is the day your domestic worker goes to court and say you've not been paying them, the court will believe them unless you as an employer provide evidence that you've been paying them.
Yeah, sure.
So that is why you must keep copy documents and save them every time you pay the domestic workers remuneration. Then another thing is off day. Every domestic worker is entitled for an off day after 6 consecutive days of work. You do not tell your domestic worker to go for off day at 8 and come back at 5. That is not 24 hours. That's not a full day. Unless
how many hours?
A full day, that is 24 hours, right?
24 hours.
Yes, after 6 consecutive days of work.
After 6 consecutive days. So how are these 24 hours calculated?
Literally 24 hours.
Literally, so they can be continuous. It's not like they have to be 24 working hours.
No, they must be continuous, like 24 hours continuous. It can be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whichever day of the week, but in every consecutive 6 days of work, a domestic worker must be given a day off.
Okay. The reason I'm asking that is because we had a question on the hours. Someone was asking, am I supposed to work on Saturday, half day, or full day? And I tried explaining that it's 24 hours. What I didn't know is that it's 24 hours continuous. So if you have worked up to Wednesday at 8, so you can meet the employer the following day at 8.
Yes.
Okay, that's clear. That's clear now.
Consecutive must be there. And then there's some employers say, okay, my domestic worker doesn't have anywhere to go, so they stay in their house. Rest day does not mean the domestic worker actually leaves your house. They can stay in their house, but don't work them. Don't make them work on their rest day. You know,
the unfortunate thing about that is that when you are in the house, no one gets to work, and you have to go to the kitchen, or they bring the child, or the child is crying. So I think it's advisable for them to go for a walk, even if they won't leave. Because when they're in the house, sometimes that one gets overlooked.
Yeah, take advantage of it. It's your right. That's why I'm saying it's a right. So if your employee is that kind, you'll be in the house and they'll be putting their legs on the sofa and calling you to do every single thing on your rest day. Go out, go meet friends, go to Kudeya meetings, go learn about your rights.
Come to the park meetings.
Come to the park meetings. By the way, come to the park meetings. Get to know your rights. Get to know what other domestic workers are going through. By the way, you're doing a good job with that. You know, ask where the park is, go there and sit with them, get to know what other domestic workers are going through, their rights, how you can save, you know, all these things you can learn from there. Take advantage of your rest day, you know, and then
we've lost you. Grace, we have lost you.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. You can see me now?
I can see you, but I can't hear you, and then you static.
Oh, okay. How about now?
Yeah, a bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I was talking about rest days, 24 hours of rest day.
Yes.
Then there are working hours. A domestic worker is not supposed to work however you want, you know, the employer wants. There are working hours as well. There are 52 working hours in a week. That's the hours that domestic workers should work. What happens if you expect your domestic worker to work past the working hours, right? You're supposed, if it's a weekend, if you're going to expect your domestic worker to work on a weekend, then you must pay them for overtime, which by then they can sue you for that. And if you look at many case laws, domestic workers are suing for overtime. How do you compensate overtime on a weekend? If your domestic worker is not going to go for Sunday off, you need to pay them double hourly rates. So if hourly rate, for example, if hourly rate, for example, is 520 and they work for 5 hours on a Sunday, you're going to times that times 2. That is the double hourly rate. Yeah. So if every hour worked, you're supposed to charge it double hourly rates. And then if they're going to do an overtime during the week, it should be 1.5 hour.
1.5. Okay.
Yes. So apart from rest day, overtime, we also have every domestic worker after working for 12 consecutive months, they are entitled for leave days.
How many?
Leave days, 21.
21 days.
Yes, of leave days. So what happens here? It is after the law says, the Employment Act says, after 12 consecutive months in employment, that is when a domestic worker can take leave. Take leave means go out, go to the village, you know, for the 21 days. How that 21 days can be taken, it can be spread out through the year. You know, it is left upon the domestic worker and the employer to agree when these leave days can be taken. However, if a domestic worker has worked for 5 months, that does not mean they were not entitled for leave days. After 2 consecutive months in employment, a domestic worker is entitled to 1.75 of leave days. And that is done now in payment form. That is the pro rata leave. That means
pro rata basis, yes.
After 2 months, they may not go out, you know, they may not go take 1 week to go to the village, they'll still be in your house, but you need to pay them 1.75. You need to remunerate 1.75.
Yes, that is clear. But why you're breaking?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, it needs to be 1.7 days. Like you remunerate that, and that is the pro rata leave.
Yes.
Hello?
Hello, we've lost you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hello?
Hello.
Can you see me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can see you, but you're not very clear.
Okay, what about now?
I'm afraid of saying no because you may disappear, and I don't want you to disappear.
No, I'm not gonna go. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here.
Yes.
What about now?
When we started, you were very clear, but right now you're not very clear. We are only seeing your image. We need to see you.
How about now?
Not yet. Not yet. Now I can even see your eyes blink. I couldn't see them before.
How about now?
Your voice is clear, but your face is not very clear. But we can do with that. It's
Maybe I
better
can
than before.
continue.
Sorry?
Yeah, I can continue. The voice is better than the face. Let me just continue.
Yes,
At
yes.
least, yeah. I was at where was I? Sick leave. I said the domestic worker after working for 2 months is entitled to 14 days sick leave. 7 days out
14
of that,
days.
yes, sick leave.
But this one is not a must. It's only when you're sick.
Yes, when you're sick, and before you actually qualify for sick leave, you must provide a document from a medical practitioner that
Yes.
you need rest. It must be qualified by a medical practitioner.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So 7
And you
days
have to
out
have
of the
worked for at least 2 weeks. You know, there are people who come and then after 1 week they tell you, oh, I don't know, I usually have problems with. Yeah,
they're
we
only
get those
entitled
stories
yeah, after 2 months. Yeah, that is
after
true.
2
So
months.
7 days, yeah, 7 days is fully paid for. So you get your
Yeah,
full salary for the first 7 days and half salary for the other 7 days.
or half.
Yes, half salary.
Okay. We are
Yeah.
learning. We are
So
learning.
yeah, apart from sick leave, there's maternity leave. This is very
Yeah.
controversial as the minimum wage.
Yes.
So many employers are not going to accept 3 months maternity leave. But guess what? You cannot terminate your domestic worker because they are pregnant.
Sure.
It is illegal. You cannot.
How
Once
about
they go
those
for
who come pregnant and they don't tell you about it?
until it's 9 months.
Sorry?
Until it's 9 months.
No, they come to your house when they are pregnant, like probably they are 3 months. You see, 3 months is not something that you can see. They haven't told you, and then they're in your house. What happens? And that information was not disclosed to you.
Is it a must? It's not a must for domestic work actually they are pregnant unless it's interfering with their job.
Okay.
So that is a personal information. So if I'm pregnant and I want to keep it to myself, I'm working. I'm fulfilling my duties. I don't need to tell you. I only need to tell you not less than 7 days before taking maternity leave that I intend to take my maternity leave.
So question, if they come when they're 3 months pregnant, that means they will work for, let's say, 6 months. And you know how domestic the work is tedious. Then they go for their maternity leave. Are they going to be entitled for their maternity, to be paid during the maternity leave?
Yes, unless you're going to terminate them for not fulfilling their duties, they're not able to work. So you say, I'm going to terminate you because you're not able to perform your duties. But just because somebody is pregnant and now they want to go for their maternity leave, you cannot. It is illegal to terminate them. On the 3 months maternity leave, you're going to pay them their full salary. And they're going to come back.
You're going to pay them?
On the 3 months, when they're going for maternity leave, 3 months, you're going to pay them their full salary.
Full salary?
Yes. And
wow.
They will come back. You're not going to terminate them because they went for maternity leave. You need to look for any other legal reasons to terminate them. And maternity leave is not going to be one of them. I know this is very controversial, but I'm just telling you what the law says. It's upon
yeah. Well, the practicability is something else, but that is the law.
Yeah. And the risk of not pursuing this or following the law is that you risk being penalized, heavily penalized, right?
Yeah. Now, the other thing is that there are some companies where when you're pregnant before you have completed 1 year, you go for unpaid maternity leave. Does that also apply in the domestic service sector?
No. And I'm even wondering which one, because it's the Employment Act. I don't know, unless somebody is not pursuing their rights, I don't know any of that life, right? I'm with my legal person here, our legal representative. No, that is not even possible.
Okay. So even that company that was doing that, it was doing it illegally.
illegally.
Okay. Thank you for that information.
Yeah.
And
Other
there is
things
another
that
leave.
there's a sick leave, there's the annual leave, there's the maternity leave. Yeah,
And
those are the
how
three leaves.
about compassionate? Is it called compassionate, where you have lost
Compassion
your
leave,
loved one? Yes.
it is upon the it's upon the employer now to decide when upon that. Because if you've taken
Okay.
your leave days, you've completed your leave days, and now you want to go bury your mother. I mean, no, it's called compassion. So the employer
It's
may
at the
choose out of
employer's
the leave days.
discretion. It's not, there is no
Yeah,
like a number of days that have been provided by law.
no, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Then that is clear. So they can always offset it against the annual leave.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So other rights that a domestic worker has is if you are living, your employer must provide you water. Actually, in the law, in the Employment Act, it's water. Employer must provide water, clean water,
Okay.
food. And then when it comes to food, the law says, the Employment Act says, it should be agreed before employment. That
Agreed
the
before employment.
yes, that the employer is going to provide you with meals. They say adequate meals. Adequate meals, common sense is like 3 meals.
Yeah, 3 meals.
So that
That
is
is
where the
breakfast,
right
lunch, and
versus,
dinner.
yeah,
Okay.
that again is where right versus favor comes in. What is after 3 meals, is she entitled to provide you with fruits, sausages, snacks, But what the law says is the employer should provide adequate, that is like 3 meals in a day. Yeah.
Wow, that is a very interesting topic, because most employers are not very open to having a discussion about food, and there is now this argument where people say, si ninakupatia nyumba, si ninakupea chakula, why are you asking for all that salary? So is it included in the package, or it's excluded in the package?
In the minimum wage order, which stipulates the minimum wage, if a domestic worker is live-in, you're not going to charge them for housing. It's upon you as an employer to provide housing at your cost.
Okay. And
But
food
if
as
they're,
well?
yeah, and food and water.
Okay, so there is no way you can say, I'm going to pay you 13,000, but 13,000 deduct rent, deduct water, deduct
No,
food, then it comes to 6,000. So I'll pay you 6,000.
that is that you are entitled to a housing allowance, so that is illegal. I've seen a lot of that. So you want me to pay 13,540, so I'm going to deduct food, I'm going to deduct housing, you sleep in my 1 bedroom, so I'm going to charge a bed sitter at 5,000. That is illegal.
Wow. Someone is asking, when you talked about the trial period, is there a set time limit, like the trial period should take place between 1 month, 2 months, 2 weeks? Is there a time limit?
A trial period should not logically take like a month, that's too long. A trial period should take a day, and we always say do trial period, perform trial period when every other member of the household is available. When the husband, the mother, everybody, every member of the household is available. It's not set, like it's not like probation period. So you can leave
Okay.
for hours or a
Oh,
day
yeah.
or
So
two.
there's a
And this
probation
is
period, there is a trial period.
there's a trial period, there's probation. Those are two different.
How long is
Yeah.
probation period?
Probation period, you cannot, okay, the law allows for 12 months. So
Allows for
if you extend 12 months, if
12
you
months
extend 12,
probation.
yes, this is how
Wow.
this is how it's put. The first 6 months, it's you, the employer, and the domestic worker agreed this is a probation period. We're going to do it for 6 months. Then the other 6 months, the domestic worker must accept to extend for another 6 months to make it 12. It must be with the consent of the domestic worker. But if it surpasses the 12 months, that ceases being a probation period.
Okay. Wow, I thought probation period is 3 months.
No. It can be 3 months. It can
Yeah.
be 2, 3, 4. But the first normally it's 6 months. Then after 6 months, you extend with the permission of the domestic worker. The trick part about probation period is that it must be accompanied by an employment contract written. And it
Yes.
must specify that it is a probation period and how long it's going to take.
Wow. Thank you. So those are the employment rights. Do we have another one? There is something else you had mentioned sometime. Sorry?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we had talked about service was it service and severance? Something. Maybe you can
Or service
also.
pay and severance. Thank you for reminding me. That is important.
Yes.
Domestic workers, if you're a domestic worker here and you work for more than a year, you're entitled to service pay. Service pay is paid. Service pay. The difference between service pay and severance pay is that service pay is paid yearly, and then severance pay is paid when there is redundancy.
Oh, when there's redundancy, okay.
Yeah, that is the difference between service pay and severance pay. So how is service pay calculated? Service pay is calculated after every year, after every 12 months in employment. And it should be, I'm sorry, I've talked so much.
I know, you need to quench you.
Yeah, it should be half month salary. So if your salary minimum wage, if you go by minimum wage, is 13,540, every year your employer is supposed to top you up with half of that.
Wow. And there is this question of service pay and NSSF. There is that where if I'm paying for you NSSF, then I'm not supposed to pay you the service pay.
Yes, that is true.
Oh, that is true. Okay, so and why they say NSSF is compulsory, but I have a choice. I can choose to pay NSSF or to pay you after every year.
It's not. It's upon now the employer and the domestic worker to agree. Are you willing for me to pay you service pay or pay for NSSF?
Okay, and this only applies in the domestic service sector, right?
No. I guess it's across. I'm only focusing on domestic workers. That's where I've specialized. And I would love to say I'm not an advocate. I'm an autodidact, if I may say. I've done this for 6 years. So
now I see. Yes. And I'm sorry for taking you out there. Our focus is domestic service sector. Wengine wataenda kuuliza maswali huko. So severance pay, you talked about redundancy. Does it have an amount that you should pay someone or it's at your own discretion?
The severance pay is calculated the same way service pay is calculated.
Okay.
But so severance pay is paid after redundancy.
Assuming that redundancy has happened after 1 year, assuming I'm going to pay service pay and severance, or I'm just going to pay.
If the redundancy has happened after 1 year, then you're going to pay severance pay. But if the domestic worker is the contract continues, then that is service pay.
Okay, how about if they had worked for like 5 years and all the 5 years I was paying the service pay? Will I pay for all those years, or it will be only for the 1 year that we have and we don't need her anymore?
Come again?
I'm asking, maybe the redundancy has happened after 5 years of service, and in the past 4 years I have been paying service pay, right? So how much am I going to pay as severance pay?
It's the same amount. Like I said, the severance pay and the service pay is calculated the same way. Now the difference is severance pay, you're paid after redundancy. So you're paid after the 5 years, but the service pay, you're paid yearly.
So if I'm going to pay you after 5 years, this is the question. I'm going to pay you half a monthly salary, which is around 6,000 and something, right? So am I going to pay you 6,000 for the 1 year that I have not paid service pay, or for the rest, for the past 5 years, which is 6,000 times 5 years?
No, you're just going to pay the last one.
Okay. That's now clear. Someone here is asking, should the DM be paid for the trial period?
Yes.
On that day that she comes, if you're not very okay with the work, you can pay for that 1 day and then you dismiss them.
It is not put down in law that you must pay for trial period, but give a human face of it. Someone has come to your house, they clean for you, they fed your baby, they've done all these things. It's only fair to compensate them for the hours they worked. It's more like labor. If a labor comes to you, how are you going to pay them? You can imagine if people use trial period, bring in someone for 2 days, go. People will be using this trial period not to pay domestic workers for a whole month, free service, right?
Yeah, free service. I know of someone who used to come to my agent and used to do that, and it was very sad that they would refuse to pay someone because they were not maybe impressed by them. But at the end of the day, that is service that has been offered.
Yeah, you need to pay.
Yeah. So
No
we
way.
have talked about domestic rights. I don't know whether there is another one that we have forgotten. I'll check in my questions. Then we can talk about employers' obligations. I think they are intertwined or something. Maybe if you have something to talk about employers' obligations.
Come again. I lost you somewhere.
I'm saying
Mhm.
we have talked about the domestic rights, and I think domestic workers' rights, I think they are intertwined with the employer's obligations, because now it's the obligation of the employer to now pay this minimum, to do all this. But do you have something that you can say about employer's obligations?
Like you said, they are intertwined. An employer is obligated to pay the domestic worker, obligated to provide them water and food,
Yeah,
obligated to grant them leave, obligated to provide them medical assistance, allow them to go for, if somebody is suffering from a condition where they need to do a retop of to top up their medication, they need to give them
yeah.
that permission. So the rights, the obligation are fulfillment of the rights. So whatever the domestic workers' rights are, the employer is obligated to fulfill them.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now we have not talked about dismissal
Mm-hmm.
and issuing notice, because that has also been a topic that most people always ask questions. I didn't give notice. How do I give notice to someone who has stolen? And maybe you can take us through the procedure of dismissing a domestic worker.
The termination, let me call it termination of contract. There are
Yes,
two types of
termination
termination
kind.
of contract.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. There is a there is termination, like you're terminated from duty and you're dismissed, summary dismissal. So let's
Summary
start with
dismissal
summary
and
dismissal.
termination. I don't know why you're not very clear right now. You were clear before.
It's raining here. Can you hear me
It,
now?
it's raining.
Cats and dogs.
Wow. Are you in Kenya? Okay.
The village. Yeah. So
Probably because this place is not raining. So you are talking of termination and summary dismissal. Yes.
So termination of contract happens, that is just
Yeah.
termination, when the employer terminates the domestic worker with notice.
With
Termination
notice.
with notice. Yes. At what point do you terminate the domestic worker with notice? For example, if you want to work for yourself, you don't need a domestic worker anymore, and you want to work for yourself, they've not committed any crime per se, but you're just not
Yeah.
comfortable having them anymore, right? So there has to be a process that you must follow. You can't wake up in the morning and terminate a domestic worker because you don't like the way they look. You told them to wash your feet and they refuse to wash your feet. The law provides reasons for termination. It has to be
Yeah.
a legit reason, like I no longer, and my kids have grown, I do not, it has to be by the reason. And to do that, you must give them a notice. Again, notice varies. If it's a probation period, the domestic worker was on a probation contract, or if she was in a fixed term contract. If the domestic worker was on a probation contract, the one we talked about, it's supposed to be 7 days notice.
Yeah.
But if it is a fixed term contract, it must be 1 month notice.
Okay.
The notice must be done in writing. The employer must call in the domestic worker and explain to them why they want to terminate them.
Yeah.
In the event you do not want to give notice, you just want this person out of your house the following day, then you need to give them salary in lieu of notice. My tongue, salary in lieu of notice. That is a
Yeah.
1 month similar amount to the salary you're paying them. So if you're paying them 13,540 and you do not want to give them notice, you need to give them a similar amount.
13,500. Okay.
Then dismiss them the following day, that day, but be sensible enough, don't dismiss somebody in the middle of the night, right? Give a
Yeah,
human
sure.
space, right? Then
Yeah.
there's summary dismissal. Summary dismissal is when the domestic worker dismisses the employer dismisses the domestic worker without notice.
Yeah.
That is immediately. And at what point is summary dismissal allowed? For example, if a domestic worker has used abusive language to the employer, if they do not follow or they refuse to follow legal lawful order, not legal, lawful order from the employer or anybody put in that position by the employer. So if the employer said, I need you to wash all the windows, to clean all the windows today, and the domestic worker says, I don't feel like, then you can summarily dismiss them.
Okay, that is a lawful order.
Yes. If a domestic worker absconds duty, you gave them an off day, it's rest day, it's 24 hours. They came back on the 27th hour drunk, abusive, rude and all that, you can dismiss them. Again, coming to work drunk is another reason you can dismiss them. If they've stolen, you can dismiss them. You must have evidence. You don't wake up in the morning and assume you want to dismiss them without paying them, so you're going to implicate them wrongly. What other? If they beat your child, if they abuse your child sexually, emotionally, you can dismiss them. But you must have proof for these reasons, So if you say they stole, you have proof that they stole from you. Then upon summary dismissal, you need to give them a summary dismissal letter or a termination letter also. In the termination letter, and by the way, if you do not give them that letter, it's a simple letter. But if you do not issue them that letter, that small, simple letter, then you can be sued for that. It becomes wrongful termination. It becomes wrongful dismissal, unfair termination, and it carries a lot of penalties. Sometimes it takes up to 12. The employer is required to, actually in the Employment Act, it says the employer can compensate up to 12 months salary.
Wow, just for dismissing without
that letter, because it's unfair termination. So that is what is provided for unfair termination and wrongful dismissal. So in that letter, you're supposed to write the day you're dismissing them. Okay, let's start. The name of the domestic worker, the date you're dismissing them, when they started, they commenced employment in your household, reasons for dismissing them. Then the clever part I need employers to learn here is that when you're writing that letter and you've paid all the dues, make sure you indicate there that you've paid all dues and the domestic worker does not intend to ask for any other dues. The domestic worker must admit you've paid them all their dues and they do not intend to come back and ask for more monies, right? Then the domestic, you must explain, if you're writing in English and the domestic worker does not understand English, it is your responsibility as an employer, your legal responsibility to explain what that letter says.
Okay.
And after that, the domestic worker is required to sign. You remain with the copy as an employer, you give the domestic worker the other copy. If the domestic worker is under a union, you must involve the union.
If there is a member of the union, okay.
You must involve the union in that decision. Yeah.
Wow. So for those who ask whether you should give notice and someone has stolen, I think you have been answered, because now how do you give notice to someone who has stolen? But what evidence should they have when it comes to stealing case?
I must admit, when it comes to theft, even registering such domestic workers in our database becomes an appeal test. So you got someone with your clothes in her bag while she was leaving. Do you take photos? Is that going to be contested in court that the employer put the clothes in the bag, then took the photo?
Sure.
It's almost difficult to prove theft, to be honest. So unless you took up, it's almost difficult unless there's a confession, some kind of confession, or the domestic worker stole from you, ran away, then the police have ambushed her where she is and found them with the items. They cannot explain where they found them from. The employer has the receipt. These are my items. I have photos of them in my house. Now that is the only time you can prove theft.
Okay. It's a tricky one, but at least you have made it very clear that you need to give them a letter. And you see, the moment someone signs that yenyewe I had stolen, there is no way that they can come and say I didn't do that. I don't know whether they can be forced to do it under duress. So I don't know whether they can say I was forced to sign, or you should get a witness.
Let me say this: confession should be done. Well, if this case is going to be taken to court, then confession should be done before the rank of a police inspector of police and above. So that police constable you found at the report desk, unless you confess that she's writing or he or she is writing, for the OB1 to be used, and also the confession must be done before an inspector of police, the rank of an inspector of police and above.
Okay. Yeah, I see our time is really running out. We have not talked about employment contracts. I believe that is the obligation of the employer to issue a contract. And on the contract, there was someone who asked us, if you're giving a contract, I think one of the things that make employers don't give contracts is because most employers pay below the minimum wage. So can they get away with it, or now this is ini kujiseti, like you're setting yourself, unajianika tu. So maybe you can tell us about employment contracts and minimum wage.
Yeah, actually not issuing an employment contract is illegal. An employment contract must be illegal. Yes. There are two types of employment contract, like I said. There's fixed term and there's probation contract. If it's a probation contract, it must be done at the onset of employment. It should be in writing. If it's a fixed term, after 2 months in employment, the employer must issue a written employment contract. It's the domestic worker's right to have that employment contract. It's your obligation as an employer to provide that contract to the domestic worker. What is the risk of not having it? So you do not want to give employment contract because you're paying below minimum wage. Guess what? If the domestic worker goes to court and sues for you do not give her leave days, you never paid her, she was doing ABCD, the court is obliged to trust what the domestic worker is saying. Because because there was no employment contract. There are instances like overtime where the court expects the domestic worker to prove that they indeed worked. If there's an employment contract and it says you are working for these hours, no overtime, then the domestic worker will be obligated to prove that indeed she worked during for overtime, right? But if the domestic worker goes to court, there was no employment contract, so expect everything the domestic worker is going to say to be trusted as the truth. Yeah. That is the risk of not issuing this contract.
Okay, so what would your advice be for those who are paying below minimum and they would want to issue a contract?
Unfortunately, okay, there's another thing I must mention. I've read a lot when people say, employers say, I'm going to issue you an employment contract. I'm going to write there, I'm going to pay you 5,000. You signed below there, so you cannot take me to court because we agreed. In the Labor Institution Act, it says whatever is in the contract, if it does not fit what the employment law says, then it is void. However, it doesn't matter if the domestic worker signed. The fact that you indicated you paid them below, the court you're actually setting yourself up.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I don't know. Yeah, you said it's also the employer's responsibility to have a say where minimum wage is concerned. I think now we are going to be more woke than we were before to have our voices heard as employers, because now we would want to issue contracts, but now most employers are paying under the minimum wage. So you are at a disadvantage in so many ways. You're not issuing a contract, and if you issue, you have set yourself up.
This is what I would advise. Yeah. This is what I would advise. Have employment contracts to protect you from every other clause, right?
Yeah.
Clause.
Yeah.
So when it comes to remuneration, be honest enough how much you're going to pay. I understand. I'm a human being. I'm a Kenyan. I know sometimes for some people, 13,540 is too much.
Yeah.
But once you get to court, that is not court's problem. That you enlisted the services you cannot pay for. That is not the court's problem. So just protect yourself. Write even remuneration, how much you're paying. The risk is if a domestic worker takes you to court, you're going to pay the difference.
The balance. Yeah, the difference. Sorry.
So it's best you have the employment contract. Be honest with the contract. Go by the contract. Then if you're patikana baadaye, too bad. But there's no way about paying minimum wage.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. So someone is asking, we talked about the authentication, that word has refused. On the original documents, your ID, we had an issue where someone, the employer held on to the original document of the employee. And now the most unfortunate thing is they lost the ID. What would this person do in this situation?
Let's begin from there. At what point, as an employer, if you have a human heart and face, take someone's original
a human heart and face, okay.
take a domestic worker's ID and keep it and lose it, it's illegal to keep anyone's original documents. And even when I said about authentication process, remember I said copies of. The only time you're supposed to have the original is when you're comparing the copies and when you're authenticating them. Otherwise, return the original documents back to the domestic worker. If your domestic worker and your employer is holding your ID card, that is illegal. If she's holding your certificates, original, that is illegal. They should be having copies, not originals. And the most unfortunate bit is that, I kind of have a clue about the story you're talking about. So this domestic worker was hoping to leave the employment, go look for another ID and move on. When will domestic workers, and I remember I said, when will domestic workers be mad enough to fight for their rights?
Because now she's stuck.
And you're setting a precedent to the next domestic worker. Can we have a generation of 2020 domestic workers who are going to fight for the rights of every other, the matriarchs who are going to fight for the rights of every other domestic worker that follows? Can we have domestic workers who take time, instead of Sunday off, you sit in the house and the employee is sending you a million things when you're supposed to rest, go to the park, go to Kudea meetings, and list with Kudea, it's 100 shillings. And 100 shillings, you get to know your rights. In case your employer does not pay you, they represent you for free, and you have something similar, legal representation. Leave the house, go educate yourself, come back and fight for your rights. Currently, we have domestic workers who look like slaves. You are underpaid, you don't go for leave days, you're slapped here, you're raped there, your employer is, you're becoming a domestic worker and, sex, something in someone's house, it's just domestic workers need to fight for their rights. And
I hope they are hearing you. I hope
employers are sitting down and liking the fact you don't know your rights. They're sitting down and liking that you don't even know where to go to when they abuse you and don't pay you. Learn about these rights. Come to our page. We always sensitize about these rights.
That is my go-to place when I want to know about rights of domestic workers. And thank you so much for always sharing. I actually hit your inbox and you always answer me in good time. Asante sana. That it helps us in doing our job, because we can't be conversant with every other thing. But when there is that kind of partnership, then it makes the work very easy.
True.
So there is this question someone is asking, how much is service pay? I think that one you answered. What about when the employer breaks the agreement before 3 months probation and fires the employee? And if your boss does not pay for that service, so what are you supposed to do?
Okay, let's start by probation. When your employer terminates your contract before the probation period ends, good. I don't know if that's it's a good thing or bad thing. Good thing for employer, bad thing for the domestic worker. The employer is not obliged to give you reasons for termination.
Because it's during the probation.
This is only on probation period. So if you're on a probation contract, your employer may wake up tomorrow and say, hey, I don't think I need your services, just go. You cannot take them to court because they did not give you reasons for termination, right? So somebody asks, what if your employer does not pay you service pay? That brings me to the answer where I should be answering. What happens if you are aggrieved as a domestic worker? What I always say, do not take the law in your hands, right? Do not fight that employer, do not steal, because at the end of the day, it makes you like the bad person here, yet you're the victim here. So what you need to do as a domestic worker is report to the police station, to the nearest police station. Report, every county has a labor office. Report to the nearest labor office. Get a legal representative. You can get an advocate to file you, a complaint in the industrial courts. And I've had, concerns that hiring an advocate is quite expensive. I can tell you, including our legal person, our legal department, what happens is that you can get into an agreement with an advocate, whereby if they know that you have a case, by the time an advocate goes to court, they know you have a case. So they sit down and agree, you sit down with them and agree, I'm going to pay you this little to just file the papers in court. Then after I've been paid my dues, after the employer has been fined, and I've paid my dues, then you take a certain percentage. So what happens is that the monies will go to the advocate's account, then you get your percentage. Don't be scared of getting an advocate because you do not have that money to start from. Sit down with them.
Yeah.
Have an agreement where you will pay them after being awarded by the courts.
Okay.
The labor offices are very helpful. And if you want to know how helpful the labor offices are and the industrial courts are, go to Kenya Case Laws reports. So many domestic workers are suing. For those who are saying, so my employer is rich, they're going to influence, I would rather we talk of challenges. What happens after you report to the police station? Do they refuse to take your report? Do the courts get corrupt? Rather than just sitting there and dealing with fear. I would love that we move beyond dealing with the challenge of fear and that challenge of, did the police refuse to record your report? Did the police get wrong so that they don't take the employer to court? Let's deal with such challenges, not the challenge of fear.
Wow. And we have cases where employees have sued and the employer was not in a position to pay them.
So the employer,
you have sued, you have won, the employer has been fined, but now you wait for the account to be rich, to have some zeros at the end, but nothing. Has there been such a situation?
I have not, to be honest, I've not heard of such situations. The cases we've dealt with, employers are paid, and in case the employer doesn't pay, you go back to court and sue them. They're obliged. They either have jail term or get attacked.
And they be jailed if they're not able to pay.
I guess they can. Let me be honest. I guess they can be jailed if they cannot pay, because if you don't pay, then your what is it called? These words.
Doing that order of the court. I don't know.
The court order, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Wow. Thank you so much, Grace. I think I have exhausted my questions, unless maybe there is something else that I had asked you before and I have forgotten to mention it. You can give us your parting shot, or what is it that you can say about this industry. And you haven't talked about how we can register on Find Real Me, and how employers can also use your platform to verify domestic workers. That is also very important.
Okay. Like I said when we started, Find Real Me Limited is a domestic workers background check company. So I think I've mentioned a lot of rights than what we do also in background check. So we have two databases. We have the conduct, I would love to call it conduct database, and the reference database. In the conduct database, we allow employers to register domestic workers who have had misconduct cases. For example, a domestic worker stole from you, abused your child, is rude, all these misconduct cases. And for you to do that, we expect you to provide some sort of evidential materials.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. That's
I almost ran away.
That is our espresso done. So the employer must provide evidential materials before we register domestic worker, because there's also that malicious aspect. Like, oh, so you're leaving me, I'm going to register you're a thief, you'll never be employed by anyone. We are not here to condemn domestic workers. We are not here to kill domestic workers. We are here to clean the industry, right?
Yes.
So we only want to put out the wrong ones, that they do not end up in another household to extend crime. Also, the second database that we have is the reference database. In the reference database, we allow employers to register their current or outgoing domestic workers so that they can give future employers testimonials on their professional strengths and weaknesses.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. So that is very...
How to use our database? So how to use our database? Currently, our website is under construction maintenance. So you can send us the domestic worker's name and ID number. Then we can run the check from our databases. But usually it's done, individual employers do it on our website. But currently, since the website is under maintenance, you can give us the name and ID number after authenticating the details.
Okay.
So you don't give us, because the ID card is not genuine. We run the check. You have a criminal we've been looking for,
Yeah. So they can reach you via Facebook, or you have a number that you can share?
Yeah, we have our phone number is 0720 560 615. You can always call us. You can reach us through our Facebook page. I'm sure it's always almost immediate.
Yes, yes, you're very good at responding. That one, hiyo tunakupea 101. So thank you so much for taking your time to come and be with us and to educate us on domestic workers' rights, employers' obligations, contracts, and answering our very many questions, some that we even felt ashamed of asking. But thank you so much for your patience and for answering us. Someone is saying that please don't forget to post the minimum wage in the municipalities. I think that one we will work on it later and post. So I will end with a quote that says, a right is not what someone gives you, it's what no one can take away from you. So that is a message that we're sending to domestic workers. Your rights, no one can take them away from you. And be mad enough to demand for your rights. Yes, so thank you so much, guys, for joining us. We will be seeing you next week on Let's Talk Tuesday. Grace, asante sana.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
We really appreciate.
All right, most welcome.
Sawa, bye-bye.